The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the Great Garment Graphics webinar. My name is Juliette Calmetta and I'll be your presenter today. This webinar is called Rip into New Markets with Distressed Applique. So today we're going to talk about Distressed Applique and how awesome it is. Okay. So today's topics, we're going to talk about what is Distressed Applique, and we're going to focus on the difference between regular applique and distressed applique. Obviously, distressed looks distressed. It's, ripped and torn. So we're going to talk about those differences. Which distressed applique material to choose between the options that are out there and why you'd want to choose them. The popular markets for distressed applique, going to give you some ideas of the different markets to target to increase your profits on sales. And also how to sew distressed applique, because it is applique, it does need to be sewn. Applique basically is when you take a piece of material and you put it on another piece of material. So sewing is that method for applique that you see on professional uniforms, fashion wear, sporting goods, things like that. So here we have a sample of a regular applique design, and applique is perceived as a higher value. So if it's distressed or regular, it is perceived as a higher value than normal decoration, other decorating methods, such as heat transfer or screen print. But it does reduce the stitch count by 80 to 90% for direct embroidery. So although direct embroidery is very popular, sometimes applique, if a design is very large or if it has large wording or if it's a large shape, direct embroidery may not be the best option because it's going to have a lot of stitches, it's going to take a long time to sew out, it could be quite expensive, and it could pucker the garment. So this way it can reduce costs as well as stitch time and the amount of stitches that it takes to sew out. Regular applique needs to be sewn as well as distressed applique. But primarily the difference is that regular applique, which you see here, has clean edges, and you can see, although that there are zigzag stitches around the edge, but they are like clean lines. You don't see any gaps or grooves cut out of them. So it's a very clean edge design, usually made out of polytwill felt or acrylic felt. So polytwill is actually a polyester twill, and we at Saul's put a sheen on top of it, which is very popular in the sporting. So polytwill and chino twill, which is an option for distressed applique, is a big difference. Chino twill is actually made out of cotton, and it doesn't have a sheen on it, so it's more of a matte finish. So it's very popular with the fashion industry. So not only is distressed applique as well as regular applique perceived as a higher value, and it also reduces your stitches 80 to 90%, and it must be sewn, but the edges are distressed, as you can see in this close-up sample here, where you don't have right off the bat the clean edges. It looks torn, there's little chunks missing here and there, almost like you rubbed it up against a brick wall, or if you just cut it with jagged scissors. So that's primarily the difference between regular applique and distressed applique. Chino twill, like I had mentioned, is the cotton twill, which is very popular, and acrylic felt. So you usually don't see like the wool felt, the heavier felt done with distressed applique. So the acrylic felt, the main difference between felt and acrylic felt is made of wool, it's thicker. When you wash it, it tends to get little fuzzies on it, where acrylic felt is less expensive, it's a little bit thinner, it's easier to work with for cutting techniques to create designs like this distressed applique. So now we're going to talk about the different distressed applique effects that you can get. And here you see a gentleman with this design from far away, and you can tell that it looks distressed. It actually has chunks missing, and from a distance it does not look like it has clean edges. It's a very fashionable look, and it's a really hot item right now. It's what everybody wants out there. So here's the effects called Melt It, And Melt It gives a very loose, casual feel. It sharpens edges and mildly blends straight lines. This effect mimics the looks used by companies such as Abercrombie & Fitch and Aeropostale. This effect looks especially good in acrylic felt. So it's just a little bit of a mild, distressing, very popular with the Abercrombie & Fitch and Aeropostale look. So it's called Melt It, which is like a melted kind of look. It's not, this is the varsity font, and you can tell where there would be like 90-degree angles on some of the text. It's rounded off a little bit. The top part, which is the Boston two-color tail, the top left is pre-aligned, and it's an effect that is not extreme. So extreme distressed means when there's chunks missing, like in the bottom designs, and you'll see in the different effects that I show you that I have both just regular, the irregular distressed effect, and then the distressed effect with the extreme, which is chunks missing or pieces missing out of the letters or the foreground layer of the design. So you can get it either just regular distressed or extreme. The next effect is called Distress It. And Distress It gives an edgy, distressed look. It still is casual with a bit more attitude. This effect roughs up straight lines and bites into corners. You will find this look used by Aeropostale and American Eagle. Distress It cut from uncoated chino twill has a great natural frayed look. So when I say uncoated chino twill, there is a chino twill and an uncoated chino twill, which we're going to get into, pressure sensitive versus uncoated. And we're going to talk about what type of materials you would want to choose and why. And there are some reasons for the overall distressed look in the end that one may be a choice versus another. So for the Distress It, it's a little bit more distressed than the Melt It. The top, again, is just the regular distress effect, and the bottom is extreme with the pieces missing out of the layers. The last effect is Destroy It, and this effect does exactly what it says. It completely destroys the entire design. This effect is for those that want maximum edge distressing. It's popular in extreme sports, skateboarding, and hardcore music. So it's very, very destroyed. It looks distressed from far away and up close. You can just see how many chunks and pieces are missing. And I do have a side-by-side comparison to show you anywhere from Melt It, Distress It, to Destroy It, how each one is affected a little bit more for that certain type of look that you're trying to achieve with Distressed Applique. So it's really cool because you have a variety of options to target all those different markets out there, which I'm going to give you some ideas a little bit later. So now we're going to talk about the different types of materials and the stitch types that you can get and why you would want to choose one material versus another. First, we have the pressure-sensitive chino twill and the uncoated chino twill. So the difference between those two is that pressure-sensitive has a sticky adhesive on the underside, where uncoated chino twill does not. So you will see out there that the uncoated chino twill, if you use that product, that when it's the actual cut method of it and after it's being washed, will tend to fray and curl a lot more than the pressure-sensitive chino twill. But there's a benefit to that pressure sensitive as well, depending on the look, because it's already going to look distressed because of the cut method itself. So if you want to not use spray adhesive on the back during the sewing process, then it might be more beneficial for you to order pressure sensitive, depending on how many that you have to do. But if you're really looking for a look that's going to be extreme distress, especially after washing, the uncoated chino twill, because there's nothing on the back underside of the material, will tend to distress a lot more after washing and after time. They're both available in all 28 colors. The pressure-sensitive chino twill is available in pre-aligned, which means that the foreground layer is already placed on the background layer. So if you ordered a two-color, the foreground would be placed in the background, so you don't have to line them up. That would save you about 40% time during your sewing process. So that's another advantage of ordering the pressure-sensitive chino twill if the overall end result of how extremely distressed the edges are after washing and that initial look when it's being cut depends, you can factor the weight of those two when you're deciding which type of material to choose. The edges do fray eventually with pressure-sensitive chino after it's being washed, but they fray slowly. So there's more of a immediate distressing on the uncoated chino twill, where pressure-sensitive, it looks distressed because of the cut method, but eventually, once it's being washed, the edges will fray. And I do have a wash sample side-by-side comparison for you after we're done talking about the other material options that you have. So it is popular to order, chino twill on chino twill, but we also have the acrylic felt where you can mix and match. You can do acrylic felt on chino, acrylic on acrylic, chino on acrylic. You can mix and match them. So they're both very popular. I see them all over the place. So it is a hot item right now. You see it everywhere. So it doesn't really matter if you order just one or the other. You can mix and match the two. Very similar to pressure sensitive versus uncoated. Pressure sensitive acrylic felt has a sticky adhesive on the underside, so that's an advantage during your sewing time. You don't have to use like tack spray to tack it down into the placement stitch. And I will have a demonstration on the sewing techniques for distressed applique that'll pinpoint that a little bit better so you understand. But you do have to sew this down, and if you're using an embroidery machine, the sew file will include a placement stitch, which is a line that is exactly the same outline of the distressed applique. So if there's a chunk missing out of a letter, the placement stitch that's in the sew disc will reflect that, so you know exactly where to place things. So you're not guessing where things go, and it's not a big puzzle to you. It'll be exactly how it looks when you receive the material. So using pressure-sensitive material versus something that's uncoated, or acrylic felt, which is just a dry adhesive on the underside, you would have to use like a light tack spray if you weren't using something like a sewer's iron. If you're going to hand sew them, you could technically heat apply acrylic felt because it has the dry adhesive on there, and then hand sew it. But we're going to talk a little bit about stitching and what's popular with the stitch types of distressed applique, where an embroidery machine is more commonly used versus hand sewing when it comes to distressed. They're available in 33 colors, both pressure-sensitive acrylic felt and acrylic felt. So there's no, you can only get so many colors in this type or the other type, so it doesn't really matter which one you're choosing besides how you're going to produce it. The edges, between the two doesn't really make a difference. It doesn't really take effect like uncoated chino twill versus pressure-sensitive chino twill, because they aren't the woven fibers, it's acrylic felt. So after washing, you're not going to see a bunch of little threads sticking out of the edges. So what's great about the different effects, melt it, distress it, or destroy it with acrylic felt, is that you get that immediate distressed result, and it's going to look that way pretty much, from the beginning to the end. You do have some stitch options that when I show you the different stitch options, where you can do like a bean stitch, which is a straight stitch, that it's inset, and acrylic felt can curl a little bit more, pressure sensitive and acrylic felt, so you'll get more of a curling effect with the acrylic felt versus the fraying, which you would get with the chino. So when you mix the two, you can imagine how cool that would look, and I'll have some samples for you. Pressure sensitive acrylic felt is also available in pre-aligned, which what I talked to you about before, where you get the foreground layer on top of the background if you order two colors, so you don't have to have a placement stitch for the foreground and the background, and that does save you about 40% of production time. So if you have many designs to do, that could be a leading factor in your decision. And then the acrylic felt can be heat applied. Okay, we're going to go to the next slide here. So here are those wash tests that I was talking about, and this is where you're going to really see a difference with the decision between uncoated chino twill and pressure sensitive. And like I said, the acrylic doesn't really get the fraying on the edges, besides it just curls after being washed. So making the decision between uncoated chino twill and pressure sensitive is really going to affect the overall look after it's been washed. And The very top design on the left we have all the uncoated chino twill, and on the right we have pressure sensitive chino twill. And the very top is at 0 washes. So you can see that the effect is a little bit more even from the cut method. How it's cut, the little fibers, you know, can start to become loose around the actual design versus the pressure sensitive, because it has that sticky adhesive. It kind of binds it together a little bit better. After 5 washes, you can start to really see how uncoated chino twill, those fibers start to release a little bit more. The distressing becomes more extreme on after 5 washes versus pressure sensitive. It still looks pressure sensitive, you know, it kind of just prolongs the overall look of it, but it's very popular out there where the uncoated chino twill, where they want it to be just completely, you know, old school, messed up. It's funny how they'd spend so much money on something that looks like it's been through, you know, dragged on the road, but that's what's popular now. So the uncoated chino twill is what our customers wanted, and we'll give it to you. So those 10 washes, you can see on the left-hand side how it just becomes, you know, it's still, you can still read it, but it's pretty messed up on the left. Where the right side, it's still intact a little bit more. So that may be a deciding factor too. You know that the end result after it's washed, and your customers are the ones that are going to see that. So when you're ordering it, you might want to let them know that if they say they want something that looks really, really distressed, then you may want to say, well, possibly you'd want the uncoated chino twill, and show them the wash. You can wash a garment, a sample garment. We do offer a sample kit that has these items in it. It's $19.95. So here we're going to talk about the stitch types that you might want to choose, and this bean stitch is probably, I'd say, the most popular in distressed applique, more versus regular applique where you see more of a zigzag stitch and everything, or a satin stitch. The bean stitch is what you primarily will see with any applique that you see out there. And the bean stitch that we have is a 4mm stitch. So each 4mm stitch segment is made up of 3 stitches. So it's really nice, and you can see it really good. It's a nice decorative stitch on top. It looks really nice. And it's also inset, so the edges may fray or curl even more. So if they were acrylic felt, you would see the curling, and then of course with the chino it's going to fray. So that's one of the options for stitching. And you don't have to get stitches on both layer. If you order a 2-color, you can get like a bean stitch on the foreground layer only and not in the background. So whatever background material that you have could possibly distress a lot more, because there's nothing stitched around the edge to keep it from, you know, like a stopping point of the fraying or the curling of acrylic felt. Here's the zigzag stitch. The zigzag stitch that we use on the distressed applique is a little bit wider than what we use with the regular applique, and the reason is because there's more of the edge exposed, so it allows for more distressing, and it's more industry standard in regards to what the look is that's out there for distressed applique versus the athletic look of the tighter stitches of the zigzag. So it's more fashionable with the wider zigzag stitch for the distressed applique. And zigzag, like I said, is traditionally what you see on applique, so this is also popular with distress, but you see more of the bean out there, in my opinion. So now let's talk about the different markets that you could make money with on this distressed applique, basically. Pretty much everybody wants it, and these are some ideas of who you could target. Of course, Greek or college, sororities and fraternities. Here's a design that we did of Alpha Kappa Alpha on a bag. You could imagine this on a shirt or anything, a jacket. But the Alpha Kappa Alpha, this is distress it, so it's kind of like the mid distressing, and it's extreme. You can see the chunks that are missing out of the foreground A's. And what's cool about those little pieces missing is that artists actually pick and choose where those are. So it's not like some program's just going to randomly pick where a chunk is missing and then all of a sudden it's like half of a dot of an eye and you can't tell it's an eye anymore. So your extreme distress, wherever those little pieces are missing, are going to be hand chosen by an artist, so it always looks awesome. So the distress is actually, this is chino on acrylic and it has a bean stitch around it. So that's a mixture of the two different types of materials. Now these samples haven't been washed, so they look nice and crisp on the edges, especially the acrylic because you don't see any fraying. But after time, it would look more distressed. But right off, right when you receive it, it looks distressed, so that's awesome. School, of course. I mean, who doesn't have a school that doesn't want distressed applique? This is a sample of like a left chest design. It's a small design, a 2-inch letter, where we have the pressure-sensitive acrylic felt on pressure-sensitive acrylic felt. So it was pre-aligned with a name drop, with the direct embroidered name drop underneath. So we have Grosse Pointe North High School on a left chest design. And as you can see, this is the melted. It looks really, really nice. It's just kind of Hollister, very subtle. But you can tell it's not, the crisp regular applique. So very fashionable. You can put these on, anywhere from the polos for just casual wear, put it in the school stores. Believe me, they'll sell like crazy. Resort wear, of course. Here's a design if you have, like at your hotels, or we have a little place in Quincy, Michigan, where it's like a summer trailer, and it's kind of funny because I started seeing distressed stuff in their store. So somebody local had started, just distressing it their own way. Either they were cutting it. You could tell it was kind of like a handmade thing, but they were, they're like $65 for just a sweatshirt. So you can see how the perceived value is very, very high for distressed applique. And they weren't, any fancy sweatshirt or anything like that. It was all just one color felt, just saying Marble Lake across the chest. And they were selling like hotcakes. I was seeing everybody on cold summer nights walking around with those sweatshirts. They sold a ton of them. So resort wear is definitely popular. Go on vacation. This is going to sell like hotcakes. For sportwear, this is the old-time hockey, and it does look old-time, old school, but it's extreme distressed. It's athletic script. It's just the standard size, which is the cap height of 2 3/4. It's pressure-sensitive acrylic felt on chino twill. So the chino twill background looks, the cut method itself distressed it even more than what pressure sensitive would look. So after washing, you could imagine it's going to look even more distressed with a zigzag stitching around it. And then that name drop is in brush script. For bars and restaurants, you could, if you have a bar or restaurant, you have a bunch of locals that love to come there, you could sell their shirts. And this Dugan's Irish Pub is pressure-sensitive acrylic felt on pressure-sensitive chino twill. And this is metal font, and it's just distress set. So it's that mid-distressing extreme. It has pieces missing out here and there with a name drop and the bean stitch. And it's really sharp in person. This shirt is very, very nice. I know that, I would wear it, so. Extreme sports, here's a design for Skate Hard, where, for skateboarders or the heavy metal music, this is the Destroy It pressure-sensitive acrylic felt on pressure-sensitive acrylic felt, so this is felt on felt. Right off the bat, you can tell it just looks, crazy distress. It's extreme. So you can see little chunks missing here and there. If you look on the K, it just has like a little hole here and there. And the artists choose where these come from. So it's going to be unique. And you can reorder them if you want. But the whole, if you order them, they'll get a reorder code and they'll stay in your account, and we'll keep that on file. But if you ordered it again, I mean, that's kind of the nature of it. It's the beauty of it. As long as you spell the word right, I think you're okay. Here's a really cool design, which is Outlaws. And this could be, you know, a biker club, or it could actually be a band. So you could do rock bands, you could do biker clubs. I know my Uncle Donnie has a scooter club, which is kind of funny. But this design is the stadium font, and it's an extra large, which is a 3-inch capital letter with pressure-sensitive chino twill, and it's the Distressed Extreme. And you can see, like, in the O, there's little chunks missing. I mean, there's big gaps, but then there's just like little holes missing here and there, which gives it a lot of character. And it does look really cool in person as well. Too bad we can only do PowerPoints on these things, but the bean stitch around it is real sharp, and it's just the gray stitching. It really brings out the black. With Detroit in the tail in a full block font. So those are different types of ideas that you can use to target the different markets out there. I mean, your mind can keep racing and racing with what you can offer these on. I mean, I have all samples of shirts, but in one bag, but if you whatever you can fit in your embroidery hoop, pretty much you can distress, and it will sell like crazy. And of course, fashion, which we see out there all the time. The fashion industry, this is kind of a mixed media where you have either screen printing or a transfer, and then a very subtle distress going down the side, kind of like that Aruba where the zipper is going down the middle and it's going vertical down. It's kind of like just turned 90 degrees down the edge, which is a really hot look. And you know, that sweatshirt, I'm sure, is more than $60. You could get it for $60 or more. So now I'm going to show you a video on how to sew distressed applique. And at any time, if you had any questions, I hope you're typing them in the chat box. I'm not sure if I mentioned it in this webinar or not. But if you think of any questions, please type them in your chat box, because after the video, we're going to do a quick Q&A session, and any questions that you might have about distressed applique, I'd be happy to answer them. So let's take a look at the video. Okay, here we go. You'll receive your distressed applique design there. The stitch group is included in the order. We cut a rectangular border around the design, so you receive it neatly intact. If it's pre-aligned, the foreground layer will be tacked to the background with a pressure-sensitive material. If you're sewing with an embroidery machine, you will have to retrieve the sew file that was emailed to you. You can use the stitch proof to mark the origin on the garment, or to retrieve information such as the design's dimensions, stitch count, and the amount of needle colors you'll need to sew out. Once the garment is hooped and your origin is marked, it's time to sew the applique. To position pre-aligned distressed applique, simply remove the protective liner from the background layer to expose the pressure-sensitive adhesive. Once the placement stitch is complete, you can easily position the design. Okay, I was just told that the video was not showing. Let me see if I can try to figure that out. You'll receive your distressed applique design in layers, and the stitch proof is included in the order. We cut a rectangular border around the design, so you receive it neatly. If it's pre-aligned, the foreground layer will be tacked to the background with a pressure-sensitive material. If you're sewing with an embroidery machine, you will have to retrieve the sew file that was emailed to you. You can use the stitch proof to mark the origin on the garment, or to retrieve information such as the design's dimensions, stitch count, and the amount of needle colors you'll need to sew out. Once the garment is hooped and your origin is marked, it's time to sew the applique. Okay, folks, sorry about that. It seems like we had tested this a few times. And of course it worked when we tested it, but when you go live and you want to watch a video or show something, of course it doesn't work out. But it was only like a minute and a half video, so it wasn't super long. Pretty much I was just showing how to sew the distressed applique, which I talked about. When you receive your distressed applique, it comes in layers, and we cut a rectangular border around it so you receive it intact. So you could imagine that when you have a script word, instead of receiving a bunch of spaghetti in a bag, you receive it in the square of material and layers that it was cut. So if it was cut like 6 layers deep, you would receive like a brick of 6 layers in a rectangular shape with your designs inside of each layer. So you just pull them out of each rectangular square so they're shipped nice and neat to you. I explain how when you have pressure sensitive, that all you have to do is peel off the protective liner and place it inside the placement stitch. Simply place it in there and you don't have to worry about tack spray, whereas uncoated chino twill you would have to use a light tack spray to keep it onto the garment during the sewing. I do show a clip in there about when you receive your stitch proof, you can use your stitch proof to set your origin, which is the midpoint of your design. You can imagine having your design printed out on a piece of paper with a big X in the middle, and your origin point would be the center of that X, where you would set your first needle. And in the video was kind of a clever way the embroiderers that were doing this for us when we were shooting the video had showed us how they just retrieved the material dimensions from our stitch proofs, and then they use a sewer's pen with cornstarch inside of it, because the cornstarch comes out kind of nice and it pats out nicely after you're done marking it. And they just retrieve the material dimensions and measure almost like the entire width of the design, like 3 inches down from the neck, and the height of the design, and they make their own cross point on the shirt by drawing it with just a ruler, which I thought was a creative way. So we'll definitely post this video. It's not long at all. It's only like 1 minute and 30 seconds, where you can watch just the tips, the pinpoints of sewing applique after the post webinar blog, but I'll put that on there for you. So since we can't watch the video, which is kind of a bummer because I try to get it all prepared for you, nice, in presentation for today, so I really do apologize about that. But like I said, we'll post it on the blog. But did anybody have any questions whatsoever, Nicole, during the webinar that I can answer for them now?
Yes, Juliet, we do have a couple questions.
Okay.
The first one is, can we have samples to present to our clients?
Yes, we do offer a sample kit, and I'm very happy that that person asked that. Let me show you. We do offer a sample kit for Distressed Applique, and I wanted to show you on our website where you can find the Distressed Applique. First, you would go to Custom Cut Services, and then select Distressed Applique, and then Go. And here we have all the different fonts, tails, layouts, the different effects, so you can see them, the scripts, the block fonts, so everything that you want. And because this is so new, we're still handwriting these orders, so you do have to download a form or call in to order, but you can download the order form and just fill it out and fax it to us, or just kind of review it with the customer service rep as you're making your order, so you don't have to worry about any prices on here. So you could technically bring this up and just have your customers pick and choose what you have. We do have the Distressed Applique sample kit, where you can purchase for $19.95, and it includes these 4 different designs, and the files are actually downloadable on our website. So once you get your kit, you just download the sew files from the website, and you can sew them out, and you have physical samples for your customers to touch and feel at your shop. And then we have these great image galleries too, to give you an idea that you can print out for them too if you want something, just in that aspect.
Okay, thanks, Juliet. We do have another question.
Okay.
Um, does the felt attract nubbies? Some of the ones I've had in the past have done that.
What was the word used?
Nubbies?
Nubby. Well, hopefully that's not a bug that it attracts. Um, but if you, let's see here, if you means like the little fuzzy balls that are on top of the felt after washing, no, the acrylic felt does not get those. That is kind of a trait of wool felt. So whatever they had was probably wool that they saw.
Okay, yes, that is what they meant.
Okay.
Okay, let's see if we have any more. Give me just one moment.
Sure.
Okay, one questions are instructions or handouts available?
The instructions, I'm sorry, can you repeat the question, Nicole?
Are instructions or handouts available?
Yes. Well, we do have handouts. They do include the pricing, but you can receive those. Uh, we have handouts available that we can, send to you, but they include the pricings, or we mailed out a bunch of flyers to our customers, so you may have already received them. But if you want something without the pricing, we could potentially work on something that you can display in your shop that shows the different effects that you could have. I know because this is something that's still new, so we're still in the process of everything that we want to offer to our customers with Distressed Applique. So that has been brought up as some type of display item that customers can put in their shops to display it to their customers. In regards to the instructions, on the home page, you can find all of our instructions under application instructions here. And we do have Distressed Applique in here that shows the different application for that.
Okay, thanks a lot, Juliet. We have one last question. It says, I placed the order before for plain tackle twill. Can that be converted to distress, or will I have to pay for a new disc?
It does have to be converted to distressed, and it would be a new charge because we do have to have an artist physically make the sew disc to convert all the stitches to the stitch types that we offer for distress, because they are more fashionable in what you see out there, plus the fact that the placement stitch needs to represent the same exact effect of the design. So if there's like a chunk missing here or there, so you know exactly where to place it, and that's all digitized, so that's somebody physically making the file, so we would need to charge again for that. But if you have your old design that you had ordered from Twill before and you wanted it to be distressed, then at least you already have the font picked out and the layout and the size, most likely, in the tail. We would just need to put it through as a distressed order for you. And what's cool about distressed is before you would receive all of the sew discs, and we email those now. So we're kind of catching up to times with that. We're offering old school, but the new services are new school. But we do email those to you now, so that's kind of nice.
Okay, that do look like that's all the questions that we have for today.
Okay. Well, I do appreciate everybody coming and tuning in today. We always appreciate our customers joining us every day. And I just wanted to show you the next webinar that we're going to have, where it's how to price heat printing products, which is a really, really hot topic. I know the person that's putting together this webinar, and they're working real hard to figure out how to give you some idea on how to price your heat printing projects. So that's like one of the #1 questions that we always get asked is, how do I price this out? What should I charge? That kind of thing. So this webinar is going to be another hot topic that will explain how to do that. So please tune in on October 4th from 2 to 3, same time as always. And I'm sure that they'll appreciate you joining them at that webinar as well. We do thank you again for joining us. I hope you learned some cool new ideas for Distressed Applique. We're really excited about this product. It's, it's a long time coming in, so it's a hot item. Call us up if you have any more questions. We'll be happy to answer them for you. And keep checking the website for any new information that we possibly could have or new offerings in Distressed Applique. So thanks again for joining us.